Not sure what happened there, but I'm going to continue. Um, so we need to get, a clear definition of that line. And then I'd like to have a conversation with We Energies. They obviously provide and have a power line which has easement restrictions on it. Through that course, want to start discussions with them and also identify anything that we don't already know about the site. Um, and then also the title search that would go along with that, which would be necessary if we're going to have any length or continued conversations with property line interest or boundary issues relative to the retaining wall.
Okay.
I'm happy to address any questions. The other item I would note is that there is a significant dollar amount put into summarizing impacted soil requirements. As we know, there's been some environmental matters on that site. A portion of where the parking lot is currently located has been capped. Though I'll say loosely capped because the pavement is quite run down. So DNR has different requirements on what they consider site closure when an area is capped with pavement versus redeveloped. So it's important to know what that impact may or may not be based upon the closures currently issued on those sites, this site.
So is there soil testing? It seems to me, it mentions groundwater, I think.
There is a summary of the impacted soil requirements. Where are you seeing groundwater, stormwater requirements?
Summarize the site's continuing obligations and the areas with impacted soil or groundwater.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep.
Scope of services.
I just don't have that document in front of me.
I'm just reading from. This $40,000 to me, I understand we need it done, but if we're watching money, I don't understand why we're not going out for an RFP. So that's why I will vote no. I think we need it done, but I think we can go out for bids on.
So the pro about going out to an RFP, you can have some other groups provide impact and quotes on the cost. Really what that means for me is 3 months. So when it boils down to it, RFP is the cycle of them take about 3 months. So once we bring it back to you, we'd issue then in September, we'd provide a month for people to provide response. We'd get those in, we'd review them. And then we'd be coming back to you in late October.
I mean, at this point, I tend to agree with Trustee Bilkbrand that the fiscal situation requires, our fiscal situation requires. And again, this is nowhere near the area of expertise for me. But my one question is, regardless of what we do with this parcel, does this survey, we keep it, we sell it, we develop, whatever it happens to be, does this survey get us where we need to be to do any of those, all of those things potentially, right? Does this survey get us, we decide to sell it, this is the survey we would need to sell it. Decide to keep it and redevelop it, this survey gets us what we need to do that. We decide to keep the land and put a new DPW on. Does this survey get us what we need for all three of those?
It's the only survey that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah,
know.
no, there's a significant list when it comes to looking at the Alta survey. You'll have an opportunity to see that. One thing I would recommend is that if you do the site evaluation, you put that out to RFP, I would do that separately.
Okay.
I would have me get the quotes on the Alta survey because there's very few people. There's a limited market on who's going to touch that from this site, given the little documentation that's there from what I've gathered so far from inquiring to surveyors of what they want to do. So if you get that wrapped up within another engineering firm, they're just going to tack on a percentage of it. Whereas our own engineer said, just go get that separately. It's going to be more cost effective for
Okay.
you.
But you understand, Mike, I just want to make sure that we're not coming back 6 months from now saying, oh, we need this additional survey,
Mhm.
need these couple things that we could have just gotten taken care of with, a small adjustment to the survey.
Mhm.
That would be that's my question. My preference is to do an ARP and try to save.
For the site evaluation.
Yes,
Okay, not the Alta survey.
not the Alta survey.
Okay.
That I just want to make sure
Sure.
covers what we need in any of those three.
That's the only tool I'm aware of.
Yeah.
For sale redevelopment.
It-
Right.
you're gonna wanna know-
Microphone.
I would agree. I mean, you're gonna want to know all these, the answer to these questions that you're gonna get from the survey, if you're gonna redevelop it yourself, or you're gonna,
Right.
or you're gonna do something else or put a new DPW on it. If you're just gonna sell it, then you know that, then maybe you don't want to know. But that's a different.
This is
I
also
mean,
true.
and I've seen that. And
I can
felt-
barely handle the
felt-
known knowns,
I-
and the known
but-
unknowns.
And there are people that sell commercial property that say, you do your own due diligence and whatever you turn up, don't give it back to me. I don't want to know. Because once I know, I have a duty to tell somebody else that I'm going to sell it to. But if you got to know the answer to these questions if you're going to redevelop it or put a new DPW on top of it. But-
Okay, and that's
but
again,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
where
I mean,
I'm coming.
yeah.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
just don't want to have to do it twice.
Mhm. I normally would agree with going out to RFP. I think the timing of this, we just are dealing with a structural analysis issue and we need to gather more information so that we can make a determination about that site. And with how complicated it is, I don't see other engineering, there's no incentive for an engineer with no experience with the site to, I guess it goes back to Strand already being so familiar. There's all that catch-up time, and I know it gets into this really uncomfortable place that it's like, well, we're always giving it to Strand, and where's the competition and all of that. However, there is an efficiency, and this is a really complicated site. So normally I would support an RFP, but I would prefer to see us take it as presented. Or take action on the motion as presented.
And I would just add too, from other, I've worked on grant applications like that where I've had to find an environmental consultant to do a study. And normally my preference would be for an RFP as well, but I feel like 40,000 is pretty much in line with for something like this typically. And, there is a time urgency, and I don't think we'd necessarily get a better deal if we went to RFP. So I think under these circumstances, willing to something as small as 40,000.
Trustee Ursink?
I appreciate the sort of the dialogue between trustees and, I can see both points from trustee Kudo to trustee McGivern. I would love to, I'd love to know what's at the DPW and what we're dealing with. But at the same time, what Attorney Bear said is once you know, you know. So, I'm kind of, conflicted as to, is this the right way to spend our dollars right now? But I think, from past conversations with trustee Stokebrand, with others, we really want to know what's at the site. And I think it's really important and valuable information to know what we're dealing with this survey. So, I'm leaning towards, moving forward with this item, especially if it's sort of an all-inclusive survey and we don't need to go back out and get more information. So I would be supportive.
Is there a motion at this time?
I'll make a motion,
Okay.
move to approve the task order for the public works site assessment and the estimated amount of $40,000 utilizing ARPA.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I wonder if we could even put in a not to exceed.
That's not a problem. The 40,000 is an estimate, to begin with, so.
Would you take a friendly amendment?
Yeah, you should speak more into your mic.
I'd take a friendly amendment and restate that as move to approve task order for the public work site assessment in the amount of not to exceed $40,000 utilizing ARPA funds.
I'll second.
All right, further discussion?
I just think, you know, this is a big process that's very important to our village, and every time we have an opportunity to provide accountability and oversight, in addition to transparency, we should do it because it's so important. And so that's why I will continue to pursue these kinds of oversight.
All right, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, on the floor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No,
All right, motion carries 4-1. Moving on to 5E, consider tenant representation agreement for commercial real estate services. Manager Ewald.
Thank you. Myself, Planning and Development Director, Griepentrag, Public Works Chair Ursink, CDA Chair Kraus, and Trustee Stokebrand conducted an interview on July 22nd, 2024, and have recommended Colliers for commercial real estate services based upon the approach and knowledge of the industrial land available in this area. A tenant agreement is attached for the board's consideration. This evening, we have Bill Langhoff, who has been wonderful and graciously patient to join us for the meeting tonight until this item is presented. He would be happy to address any questions that you have with regards to this item. A couple things that I just want to note. One proposal was submitted. Fee for services listed in the proposal is 4% of the total acquisition cost of the property, or 4% of the net lease, or 100,000 flat fee, whichever is greater, and Bill will allow you to expand on that if you'd like later. Fees for services are paid by the seller in the agreement, and that was clarified in the Colliers' final draft of the tenant agreement. The tenant agreement for services was reviewed by the village attorney. He noted that the overall form of the agreement complied with applicable contract law, but drew attention to the agency fee. It was also further noted by Attorney Bayer that in discussions within the firm, the tenant agreement with another member who specializes in real estate law, that attorney had suggested that the village consider issuing an RFP to solicit the development partner to find and construct a new public works site and or redevelop the site. Noting this only because it continues to come up with different specialized people in real estate. This is the same concept that was brought to the May 30th joint CDA and village board meeting, and has been previously suggested by a developer, and then also T. Whaley Smith with the CDA as we've continued to look at the site. And that really, in essence, is there's likely going to be no one more motivated to find a site and move the public works operation other than someone who, of course, besides Bill, but Bill's also very motivated, but besides a developer who would look to redevelop the site because time is money. So that is something that continues to come up. However, all that being said, the village board has directed that from that May 30th meeting, we proceed with engaging a commercial real estate broker. I can confidently say with the individuals who were present during that interview that I do believe we have the best broker who we can have for pursuing what is going to be an exciting project. And that I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to learn more and kind of flush through some of the options available so that we can get to the next step, really, of information gathering and decision making as we go along this journey. I'll conclude my comments. If any of the board members have additional questions for me, I'm happy to address them. Trustee Stokebrand was also present during the interview. And I know we have also, while Mitch Opplin, CDA member, was not present during the interviews, has been engaged from the CDA perspective. And then I think it would be fine to, after we address the board's questions, also provide Bill an opportunity to say a few comments.
Mhm. All right, any questions from the trustees? Yes. Or
I just wanted to
comments?
say that I think this is one of the first steps we do in finding out how different options will pencil out for us, right? We haven't given up on the site that we have, but we want to know what's out there and how the math would work on them, because we can't make a decision until we know what the numbers are and what the parameters are. And so I'm really looking forward to the work that you can do for us to help us figure out the best path forward for the village. It's a huge project for us. As Trustee Kudo has said many times, this is probably the biggest thing we'll do while we're on the board. And so we look forward to working with you. And I'm glad that I felt very strongly that you understood the importance of the decisions we're facing.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, Bill Langhoff with Colliers International in Milwaukee. I head up the industrial services group within really for the state of Wisconsin. Understanding that this is, I would describe it as a transformative project for the village. And obviously large in size and scope. So understand the importance of it and hope that I can add a lot of value. I will say I was very impressed by your Barrientos, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Sure.
The report that they provided, and I think they've done a good job at drilling down and giving you a pretty good understanding of cost to take a virgin site with no building and build a structure. So I was impressed by the work that they did for you so far. I think that this was money well spent, in my opinion.
Thank you.
This is Trustee Ursink. I just wanted to say thank you, Bill, and meeting you and Russ the other day was, it was inspiring to see what we can do here in Shorewood, and really always excited to take that next step and keep this project moving forward in the right direction. You're right. This is this is a very transformative project, and as we've heard tonight, we've got a lot of we've got a lot ahead of us, but I think in the long run, this project is really going to do the village justice, long term. The one note I just wanted to make is Bill is from Shorewood. He's gone to school in Shorewood. Russ, and one of the other partners, used to live in Shorewood. So these are two individuals with a lot of experience, not only in Shorewood, but the surrounding area. And, just after our meeting, felt very confident that they know exactly, what our community, they know exactly our community and what its needs are. And I really do think they'll be working, for us. So appreciate it. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a proud Sherwood Greyhound.
All right.
Yeah, I guess a little bit further summary, working with both landlords and tenants over the last 27 years, and all I do is industrial. I don't do retail. I don't do office. I just focus on industrial real estate. I do it all day, every day, and have a very good feel for the facilities, the land, the ingress, the egress, a lot of the physical, what I'll call brick and mortar characteristics that these facilities, again, were addressed very well in this document, have a very good understanding of your needs. And one thing I've requested already, Rebecca, is to tour your existing facility. Very curious to see some of the, what I'll call pinch points or the challenges that your municipal employees face on a daily basis, just with the physical challenges and characteristics of what they're dealing with. I think it would be good to see that, at some point early on here. Do you want me to go into detail, Rebecca, just regarding the market and kind of?
I'm just gonna
we'll
let the
field
board,
Questions.
maybe this
Mhm.
is just given the time of the hour, I just want to ask the board if they have any questions relative to the action item in front of us this
Mhm.
evening.
I would love to hear if you've got a brief overview about the current market. I would love to hear that, if we may.
We may, I have comments and questions regarding to the, considerations within the memo, actually. So it may make sense to take those first. Trustee McGovern, do you have anything that's directly tied to the, memo and the considerations around the costs? No? So there's no doubt in my mind that we would get an excellent service, being in, an agreement, with your company. And this is this is the awkward part. When I've been involved in this since 2013. And when I see, basing upon a 2.5 million purchase price, it's never come up anywhere near that purchase price, anywhere near that. And so setting that up and then a 4%, it all of a sudden feels to me that we're in this very competitive, fee structure that I know, potentially a seller would take up, but there's risk there. It's all in the details of the deal. So at a very high level, what I'm seeing between these two options, because I do remember that we had two options that we could RFP to develop the site or RFP to get a broker to look at other sites, as an exercise in seeing what's out there and how it pencils out. But seeing what's out there and then moving forward with it in an à la carte brokerage relationship puts us in a position where we might be overpaying for something. Whereas if we RFP to develop and one of the requirements is that developer finding us a site that meets our needs because we have all that work done, then there's an incentive in that pathway that we wouldn't overpay. There's an incentive to not overpay. So this is a very difficult, I'm not putting you on the spot of saying, are you going to overcharge it? You know what I mean? Like you're not incentivized to get a lower cost on land necessarily. And I don't really want to put you in that position, but I'm just saying as a board member, those are the two value points that I see. The one that's before us tonight as an agreement is a step that the board felt comfortable taking. It's an à la carte, it's a step forward, getting some information. But when it comes to actually purchasing a piece of land or finding a place to relocate, it may not get us the most competitive price. And then we still have to, potentially go out to RFP and things like that. And so I personally am interested in, and since we only got one proposal too, again, it is not against you as a professional or that we wouldn't get good service. I'm sure we would get excellent service, but just on behalf of the taxpayers to keeping the costs of a potential relocation as tight as possible, I feel a due diligence to see what an RFP for a development proposal with a relocation site in it, what that would potentially yield us as a value point. So that's just what I want to say is that I see that in doing the due diligence around this agreement and this fee structure, we got another way to go that could present some value to our village and cost savings. And so I would like to look into that, but I'm not sure that that's the interest of the board.
So is what you're describing the final bullet on page
Mm-hmm.
358?
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to hiring a real estate broker, we would look for a development partner to find and construct. Because at this point, we wouldn't pay him anything. The seller would pay.
If that were
That's the arrangement that we've got going right now.
it
in front
is,
of
but
us.
I mean, I don't need to talk to, there's still a way that we might have to pay because it would be an inflated
Sales
purchase
price.
price.
Can I just
Yeah.
chime in?
Mhm.
I stand here before you this evening telling you that I will work for free because you don't pay me. The seller pays. Every seller of real estate at some point or another, particularly if that site is listed, no different than if you sell your residence, they factor in a fee to that listing broker. The agreement that I have before you this evening is a tenant/buyer representation agreement, wherein I am only paid if we find a site or a building and you close. What I can tell you with almost absolute certainty, that the sites that are going to be available to you for this assignment of relocating the DPW, every one of those owners, I know all of them, have factored in a fee for if a transaction
Potential sell.
commences.
Okay.
So that's, I think, the first transaction.
Mhm.
The second transaction with respect to your current site, we have not talked about.
Mhm.
And as far as I'm concerned, that's not on the table, at least for me right now. I hope to be involved. If we do our job well, I would hope to be invited to that dance as well.
Mhm.
But with respect to the new site, us procuring a new site for you, the seller would pay that fee. And trust me, they've already baked a fee into that. And there's probably a listing broker that I would be cooperating.
Mhm.
Important point, though, with the agreement in front of you, I actually have an agency relationship, and we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. An agency relationship with the village. I am not would not be a sub-agent of the listing, which in most transactions, that's the case. But if this agreement gets executed, my allegiance, my client is the village of Shorewood. My customer would be the listing broker, his client, his or her. Does that make sense? I hope.
I think so. Mhm. Yes.
Just a few comments on that. First of all, I generally agree 100% that when you're talking about a sophisticated commercial industrial seller who has a finished facility that's essentially, more or less ready to move into, that you're talking about dollar amounts in the $2.5 million range and up. And I mentioned 2.5 because if you just work out 4% to 2.5, that's three. I think that's where they used as sort of a demarcation line for the 4, or was it, actually it was 4%, right? So at any rate, at those types of numbers, yeah, I mean, the math works out and there's some kind of anticipated broker fee baked into that. Where you run into sort of different situation is one of the bullet points says that there was a Vienna site that was looked at that was I think it was 500,000 or 600,000 that it was listed at. I'm pretty sure there's not $100,000 of brokerage fees baked into that price point. So then it potentially it's a different scenario at a lower dollar amount if you end up buying an empty site, so to speak, to build on. But no, at those higher numbers, yes, a sophisticated seller does bake that in. But if you buy the empty lot, for, 500,000-600,000, it's a different equation. So the alternative that President McKay was mentioning is one of the things that I talked to a colleague of mine about was he said if you put out an RFP and say, here's the parameters, here's what we want, how many square feet, it has to be within 1.5 miles of the village line, and it's got to be so, certain parameters, here, put a proposal together. You'll potentially reach sites that are being sat on by developers that are not quite sure what they're gonna do yet with, or, it'll bring out of the woodwork additional options, and there'd be people that would be interested in putting something together, and it could be for lease, it could be for lease to buy, it could be, a swap with your current site, who would, maybe they would be interested in acquiring, this site. That's all things you can work out later, but it does open you up. So I'm not necessarily advocating one or the other. That's a policy question, but again, the main point is generally at those higher numbers, yes, there's a fee baked into it and that works. So factor what happens if we just end up buying a vacant lot for significantly less than that? Does the 100,000 minimum interfere with the ability to make that deal? And then, of course, the other option that's been discussed at the CDA level and talked about there, which is put out a request for proposal and see what comes back. So again, my belief is that Colliers would do spectacular work for you and give you great service. They know what they're doing, but these are merely things that need to be considered as you move forward, as, those considerations.
And I guess before talking about the market, if I may hear from the other trustees, if my colleagues, if what your thoughts are on the concern that I raised.
I've been talking.
I guess if staff wants to hold back and do another RFP for a development partner to find and construct a new public work site, I'd be willing to listen to that feedback. I'm comfortable going forward this way. Unless staff feels strongly.
I guess I'm just not clear on how, that seems like it would be a pretty big change from what we were doing. And so, I feel like I don't have enough information right now to make a vote. So I'm just curious, just kind of how, how did we get to a point where we're putting out an RFP to find a commercial real estate agent for us if we were gonna go this other route?
It's because at that joint meeting, both options were put forward, but the motion that got made was to, the comfort of the group was, the motion that got made first was to proceed with a broker RFP. And I think that maybe you can fill in, but it seemed that felt like that was enough of a step forward to get us more information without sort of this feeling of committing to the whole kit and caboodle. So and in terms of procedurally, if there were interest on the part of the board to get more information about what it would mean to put out an RFP for proposals to develop the site with a relocation option built in, then we would simply defer this matter. I wouldn't recommend that we vote to, have staff come back with an RFP because we're not agended for that.
I'm comfortable moving. I'm comfortable. But if trustee Ursink has something, I don't want to jump on that.
No, I'm actually comfortable moving forward.
We appreciate that. So I would like to hear a motion.
I move to approve the tenant agreement to engage Colliers for commercial real estate services.
Second.
Motion by trustee Kudo, seconded by trustee Stokebrand. Any further discussion? I appreciate the comments from my colleagues, and I'm happy to support this as well.
Could we get that really brief market outlook?
Market
Broken.
condition for
I
industrial.
call the question first before we.
Yeah,
Can we vote on it before we get the outlook? I think we have to.
procedurally, we can do that. All right, all those in favor of the motion, on the floor, say aye.
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 I,
Any opposed? No, motion carries. I'd like to keep this item open for the purposes of hearing about an overview of the market.
So, as an industrial guy, and I just speak to industrial, COVID was a very, very interesting, time for industrial real estate. March of 2020 hit, everybody went home and started ordering things off their phone and started making huge improvements to their houses. And we all heard about the supply chain crisis. Well, that supply chain crisis was was the best thing for industrial real estate in my 27 years in this business, and historically, really in history. More industrial real estate was developed from 2021 to end of 2023 than any other time in history. The stock of industrial real estate, and we've all driven south to 94 and seen the million square footer after million square footer after million square footer that has gone up. It's happened in Germantown. It's happened in Green Bay. Amazon just announced a 3.8 million square foot, 4-story building in Madison. There's one that's probably going to be happening in Green Bay. That all trickled down to the middle market, 30, 40, 50,000 square foot, whether it's the Franklin Industrial Park, Oak Creek, New Berlin, Pewaukee, Germantown, you name it, Glendale. Industrial continues to be very, very solid and steady. Industrial land is very, very tough to find. One of the sites, your Holton Avenue site, has been looked at, I can tell you, by every major regional developer in southeastern Wisconsin, and really regional developer. Sadly, it's a site that's just not buildable because of the pollution that has occurred there over the years, and probably won't be in our lifetimes. It's actually the dirtiest site in the state of Wisconsin. So it's a site I would steer you away from. But it continues to be very, very solid. Manufacturing, the reshoring efforts have been, I think, although overstated, still very effective for southeastern Wisconsin. A lot of companies bringing jobs back to southeastern Wisconsin and actually keeping the jobs, most importantly, keeping those jobs in southeastern Wisconsin and not reshoring it to other parts of North America. So, more micro, the North Shore and the Milwaukee metro area, the suburban communities, the limited amount of industrial real estate that is here. And we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, most of it being in Glendale and the River West area. You drive through those areas and there is virtually zero vacancy. So prices are going to be high. Your Vienna site, though, that's a site that at $700,000, I think they have it priced at. You're, at $150,000 an acre for an infill urban type site. I think that's a well-priced site. There's some work that needs to be done there, but overall, suburban infill industrial is very solid and steady, and I think it tracks the overall local market economy with unemployment as low as it is. It's a good place to be. Anything else?
Any other questions? All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much. We look
Thank you.
forward to working with you. All right, we have one more item of new business. 9F, consider RFP for redevelopment of village-owned parking lots. I believe this also comes from Manager Ewald.
Yes, and the CDA. Attached is an RFP for redevelopment of village-owned parking lots. The CDA was requested to review and provide a recommendation on this RFP to the village board. They met last week. A couple of just key process elements that I want to note. Submissions of proposals follow policy 40, with the exception that step 1 will require the developer to provide a short presentation, not to exceed 15 minutes to the CDA and village board, followed by review by the village manager and planning and development director on the proposal's consistency with village plans, priority, and public assistance goals. Following completion of the review and presentations, applicants will receive feedback from the village and may be encouraged to submit a Phase 1 public assistance application and continue the process for requesting public assistance. If the proposed project is not consistent with the village's current zoning requirements, the developer seeking assistance shall elect whether to proceed with completion of the official application. If the party proceeds, everybody acknowledges that proceeding with a public assistance application does not grant an exception to any zoning requirements nor guarantees receipt of that assistance. Following the initial interviews on September 12th, additional RFP responses may be submitted by the 15th of each month on a rolling basis moving forward. Future CDA and village board interviews would be conducted on the first Monday of each month at 5:30 p.m. Following the submissions. This provides really just a more collaborative process for entertaining future requests for public assistance between the CDA and the village board, and a level of predictability in terms of when those deadlines and review times would be scheduled for CDA and the village board. In the room tonight, we have Mitch Uppling, who is a member of the CDA, also trustee Stokebrand, who is president at the meeting on July 30th that we held, and I'm here and available to address any questions you may have.
All right, questions or comments from the trustees? Any additional input that you'd like to share, trustee Stokebrand or CDA member Opping?
I was the only no vote on this, and the only thing that bothered me was the open-ended nature of this. There's no final date, and it seemed to me it would be more helpful if we had it like in 6 months or perhaps quarterly. I'm concerned about staff capacity. Others on the CDA assured me that there would not be a stampede of offers. This will not be an egregious amount of work. I still have the same concern that, you know, it just seems to me that if you want proposals to come in, it really is best to have proposals come in together. But I guess the anticipation among others that know more about real estate than me is we're not going to be getting that many. That's still my concern. The other thing that I did think of later was one thing that we discussed right away when we extended the TID for affordable housing was, we liked the Light Horse because it mixes affordable with market. And there was a feeling among many people, as I recall, that it was important to be inclusive. And I guess I would still feel that way. I don't know if this is the place to put it, but I don't feel like, I know Whitefish Bay is going to get a building on a corner that's all 100% affordable housing. And for the village of Shorewood, we have that, of course, with 450 low-income housing apartments at River Park. And I guess it was reminded after the meeting that something that was important to us when we started this was that this be an inclusive, and that was sort of the beauty of the rental vouchers, right? I mean, you don't know who's got a rental voucher. And so it makes it easier to be more inclusive. And so I'm sorry if I'm veering off point here, but I think it's worth mentioning here. I think it's important to move forward, but I am concerned about staff capacity.
Thank you. CDA member Opping, do you have anything you'd like to add? Okay. Would you like to speak? Ms. Kylie Miller?
Thank you. Barbara Kylie Miller, 4051 North Downer Avenue. A few years ago, Shorewood received an award for being a multi-generational community. And I'm reminding you of that because I'm going to ask you to consider removing the parking lot behind this building from this RFP. Residents of all generations use that parking lot. Seniors use it when they participate in programs that our senior resource center puts on. Parents with carloads of kids and armloads of books use it when they come to the library. Residents of all generations use it when they come to Village Hall or the Village Center to participate in meetings such as this one, to request village services, and of course, to vote in election season. Not every resident has the mobility. A lot of you bike and walk, but not everyone can do that. And many of us don't want to walk home in the dark after meetings, whether we're visitors or you're coming home, you're coming here directly from work. And of course, then once we get to those long months of inclement weather, that parking lot is really vital. Having worked on the development of both the comprehensive plan and our recently updated form-based zoning code as a member of the Plan Commission, I can tell you that there was no discussion nor desire to develop that parking lot. I think we can all agree that it's essential to provide open and transparent government to residents. And that includes making it easy for them to participate, whether they're a volunteer in a committee or just attending in the audience. And of course, serving the residents should always be mission number one with the village government. I appreciate your consideration of my request and hope that you will agree to remove this particular public parking lot from the RFP. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments, questions?
This is trustee Ursink. I just wanted to follow up on that comment. I think within our conversation at that meeting, from what I understood is that we would like to keep the public parking, but it would be covered and you know, potentially built upwards, but there would still be the opportunity for public parking in that lot. So Rebecca, remind me if I'm wrong with that, but that was, I think, part of that conversation is to keep that public, but you know, but it would be like covered. And by it being covered, there'd be less likely, like it would be easier, because right now in the wintertime, it's really hard to the snowplows to actually do an efficient job plowing that parking lot due to overnight parking. So there's a lot of cars that are parked there in winter, and we can't efficiently clean that space. But if it were a covered sort of situation and we built upwards, that would be a lot easier for maintenance. Just if you could clarify that for me, Rebecca, that we kind of talked about keeping that public.
Sure. The concept for development on the parking lot behind Village Hall really came from suggestions or thoughts around development similar to one that occurred in Whitefish Bay behind Fitzgerald's Pharmacy and the Breadsmith. And there was a parking lot that was public parking for years and years. The developer maintained the public parking on the floor level and then just built up. So if you haven't been familiar with that concept, that's the nearest location, I think, here where you can see it. So the concept was, hey, you know, we do struggle with maintenance of the lot because we have overnight parkers here. So it receives complaints from SRC and also sometimes library patrons because we can't remove snow in between the cars, you know, during different measures of inclement weather, depending on when that happens. One of the evaluation criteria that's listed within the RFP is the number of on-site public parking stalls that's been maintained. We obviously have a need and a duty to provide that accessibility to our municipal facilities. library, senior resource center, and would have a desire to continue to do that. Essentially what it would be is seeing if anyone could work with that, on this particular site. Given the frequency that we have people and need, public parking within these stalls.
Would it, would it be fair to say that it's discussed, it's put down as number 3, pardon me, number 4, but it's not a guarantee, right? It's not a, if they're not gonna do it, then we're not gonna move forward. We're
No,
not, at-
we
we're
don't
not at
have
that
to.
point.
Right,
Right.
at that point, then I think that's when the CDA and the board and that feedback discussion, right? If someone came in with a development that did not have any public parking left on that site, I don't think you'd be very receptive to moving forward with that.
No, I
You
mean,
just got,
Sure, but
Yeah.
it's, who knows when it's gonna happen? Who knows what board's gonna be here when it happens? I mean, we've all been around long enough to see that, boy, we wish this wouldn't happen, turns into, well, it happened and we didn't have much of a choice. So, because there's no guarantee on public parking specifically for that lot, I'm gonna vote no. But-
Yeah. Actually, in those situations, we've never done an RFP like this before in the history of the village. Am I?
correct.
But if
Yeah,
it's for, if
but-
it's for public and we could include
Right,
guarantees.
if it got,
Do you know what I'm saying? If it's
Uh,
public funding, we can,
right, this RFP is non-binding. So somebody submits a proposal. If there's not interest to move forward, we don't move forward.
sure. I mean, look, I'm well prepared to lose this vote in like 30 seconds.
Oh.
I'm just saying, I'll be voting no because we don't have a guarantee on the front end. But I'm gonna
Understood.
be one for the second time tonight. Probably.
Come forward.
I'd just like to mention that, like Kathy said, the members of the CDA weren't confident that we were gonna get like a stampede of interest. And I think keeping it more open was a hope of getting more people interested and involved. And with the process that we have, having it not be a single set date, when someone comes with a proposal, we can give them the feedback that we like all this, but we need the parking. And so like the process is set up to allow for feedback, to allow for changes to occur in the process.
No, I totally get that. It's parking there is so that's, but I understand the
Yeah.
process, understand the thought behind it. That's just where I'm.
Thank you, noted.
I would just, it looks like we're about to wrap up, but just to kind of, I think I just want to comment that the flexibility kind of helps us cover all the bases. We can look at the proposals as they come in. Parking is mentioned in there. It's actually comes in ahead of how many affordable units there are. So I think people get the message that, parking is a concern. I do just want to highlight for the board and, maybe people who would be interested in submitting an application is that, there is a downside to maintaining that level of parking. It makes the project more expensive, makes housing more expensive. And, we have a lot of, when I was out doing doors campaigning, a lot of people were telling me, I've got someone in my family who's got a disability and there's no affordable housing. I don't know where they're going to live when they're old enough. And, a lot of people who, might live in a development like this don't even drive because they have a disability or because they're elderly. There's, about 30% of the people are either too young or too old or have a disability and don't drive at all. So I think we should keep that in mind too when we're developing infrastructure and making policy that, not everything has to be done around cars because not everybody drives. Most of us probably on this board, we probably all have at least 1 or 2 cars, but not everybody does. So I'm going to vote yes. I think it's actually a really exciting project. We talked about some kind of depressing stuff earlier. But this is where we get to actually build something and add some amenities to the village and help solve a problem that people talk to us all about all the time, is the lack of housing in Shorewood and lack of affordable housing in particular.
Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I would. I would like to, let me just make sure I get this language correct. I would like to make a motion to
It's on page,
It just says, I move to approve the RFP for redevelopment zone parking lot.
Yes.
I'm not making that
I know.
motion.
yeah,
I'm just reading
moved
it to you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I move to go forward with the RFP to redevelop the 3 village-owned parking lots.
to accept, to approve the RFP.
Yeah.
Potentially. A second?
Second.
All right, motion by trustee McGovern, seconded by trustee Ursink. Discussion, trustee Stokbrand?
Yeah, I will also join trustee Ursink voting against this because I do feel the 3900 North Frederick Avenue parking lot is a line in the sand for me too. And I guess besides the point about not wanting the rolling deadlines, the thing about this lot behind the village is our village hall is such a stunning building and it's so historic, and I love being able to see it from a distance. And I have a really hard time after all the work we went to save the fire station, and we have this beautiful building next to it. And if there's any place I really don't want a 4-story apartment building, it's next to this beautiful building. So I would rather see that address removed also, and so I'll be voting no. And I know there are options, going forward, but I would rather just take this one off the table right now.
And again, this isn't a statement on housing or redevelopment. From my perspective, this is I just want to guarantee that there's parking. So take that for what
And one other thing, with the 2 million from the TID, we could use 25% of that money, I believe, to make housing more accessible and more environmentally friendly, if I recall correctly from this. So we do have an option with that money to increase accessibility in housing that currently exists.
Thank you. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye.
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 I,
Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Motion carries 3-2. That concludes new business for this evening. Thank you, everyone. That was a lot of new business, really important things. Reports of village officials, item 10, 2 under the village president, which you can.
Don't take offense. I'm going to step out momentarily because I've been in this chair for 4.5 hours.
Sure.
I'll be right back.
Do you have any updates? Okay. Any other village trustee updates, trustee Stokbrand?
Yeah, I have an update from the Public Parks and Spaces Committee, specifically the Bike and Ped Safety Subcommittee, things that they're going to be looking forward to working on this fall going into 2025. Specifically, they're bringing this up because it will be something they will be seeking in the 2025 budget. They're looking at updating the village code related to different uses on the sidewalks, specifically allowing bicycles, people with disabilities to be able to use the sidewalks. And secondly, Oak Leaf Trail, they'd like to see improvements for safety and satisfaction there, such as signage for the entrances to promote responsible, safe, and courteous use of the Oak Leaf Trail by all users, possibly graphic design signs. And finally, address reckless driving with the assistance of Shorewood Police Department. They hope to look into collecting information regarding reckless driving in Shorewood. Based on info collected, make policy recommendations to the village board with the goal of deterring reckless driving and bringing in revenue, lowering tax. So that's
great. Any other trustee updates? Hearing none, village manager?
Toya, do you want to provide a brief update on the absentee ballot box?
Sure. As of July 16th, 2024, the Dropbox has been, absentee ballots have been permitted to be placed into the Dropbox. Just because I foresee it could change, I did ask DPW to make a sign on the side of it that can be removed in the event that, it has to be removed. But right now, the, drop boxes are, or the drop box is available, for absentee ballots.
Thank you. And I look forward to meeting the assistant deputy clerk? No, the, who? who do-
Elections and licensing. clerk.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes, I knew. So no, we have full staff down there. It's great. All right, future items of consideration, there are none this evening. We are going to adjourn into closed session. Yes, Ms. Kylie Miller? Oh, yeah, I just referred to that the meeting minutes and information packets are hyperlinked in the thing. I don't usually read aloud from the packets, so thank you. All right, and at this time, we will adjourn into closed session. Yeah, we do need a motion on that. Is there a motion to adjourn into closed session?
I move that we adjourn into closed session pursuant to 19.851G to receive an update from legal counsel on strategy regarding pending litigation regarding Stephanie Rapkin versus the Village of Shorewood.
Second.
Motion by trustee Stokbrand, seconded by trustee Kudo. This will be a roll call vote.
Trustee Ursink,
Yes.
trustee Stokbrand,
Aye.
trustee Kudo,
Yes.
trustee McGovern,
Aye.
president McKay.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
All right. Thank you all for attending this evening and your support and interest.
And your steadfastness,
Yes.
10:30.
And if it was a long one tonight. We did what needed to be done.
We knew it was gonna be.
So for those on the call, because there are some, besides our trustee Ursink, we're going to be stopping recording and the voice portion of this. So we're going to move away from this meeting. I don't know what time we'll be getting back together, but really the only thing we'll be doing following with any re-adjournment is coming back on and then having a motion to reconvene into O session and then to close the meeting. So we don't expect any other terms of business, and I want to just provide that to you in advance so that you're not here waiting. The village clerk is leaving. I only say that for your benefit because I know that you're you're on the call because you're learning the role of the village clerk. So usually at this point, Toya is also leaving the meeting for the evening. So wanted to let you guys all know that. And then Arthur, I'm gonna move you into a different room for purposes of this closed session.
Awesome. Thank you. You all have a blessed day.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks so much for joining the meeting tonight. Mai, if you're,
Adjourn. Move to adjourn?
All those, any objections? We stand adjourned at whatever time it is.
11.
11:04.
I was way wrong. I thought. What was your?